Hello. So I'm going to try something new today. I'm going to try showing you how I cook. Today I'm going to be talking about how I make beef broth. This recipe is one that I designed myself. It's based on sort of traditional French cooking techniques, but with a lot of simplifications, which I found make the broth not only easier to make, but also more to my preference. So let me explain the concept of broth, why you would make broth, what it's good for. So a broth is an extraction of ingredients into water to form the base of a soup, or it can be used as a base for a sauce. So generally you're going to have some animal parts that you're going to extract, like fats, collagen, flavoring compounds from, and also some vegetables that you're going to extract flavors and like sugar, sweetness from. This is going to be a beef-based broth. I use this type of broth for really quite a wide variety of things, like anything. You can use it for French onion soup, you can use it for pho, Vietnamese noodle soup, I've done that. You can use it for chili, you can use it for curry, you can use it for Irish stew, really pretty much anything. This process takes probably about 4 hours, most of which is waiting. I'm going to show you the prep and then get it going, and we'll skip to the end and I'll show you the final processes at the end. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've got these beef feet here. These are, pieces of foot from a cow or a bull, I don't know. These are rich in collagen, so they can make like a nice thick broth. And collagen it's a type of protein. It's only found in animals. A lot of your body is made up of collagen. Collagen contributes to joint health because your joints are made of collagen, so it's a very good thing to get. The other animal ingredient that's going to be here is beef bone broth. I got this at the store. It's like this thick jelly of broth made from beef marrow bones and carrots and water. They didn't have beef marrow bones at the store, so that's why I'm using this broth, although it's very nice broth anyway. So my first step here is I'm going to quickly blanch these beef feet. Blanching means I'm going to put them in water and bring the water to a boil. And once the water comes to a boil, then I'm going to take them out. So that's just going to extract some stuff out of the beef feet, like stuff that we would call impurities, blood, like I don't know exactly what gets extracted, but it's stuff that if I didn't extract it, it could rise to the surface of the broth and need to be skimmed off anyway. Blanching is not a necessary step. I've heard it said it's mainly done for color reasons, making a more clear broth. I don't know if that's all that it really impacts. But I don't always blanch. It just depends on, I'll take a look at the ingredients and just decide. It depends on what I'm going for as well. I'm just going to turn down the volume here a little bit because I'm worried I might be clipping. Alright, so. To blanch these beef feet, I'm going to use the stock pot here. This is a 9-quart stock pot. I'm just going to add enough water to cover up the beef feet. it's also important to note here, I'm using cold water. If I start with warm water, then it's going to come to a boil faster. And since I'm done, as soon as the water comes to a boil, that would shorten the process. So it might not get the job done as completely. I'm not quite sure though. But regardless, that's why I'm using cold water. And so I just put that on the stove at medium-high heat. That is probably going to take about 30 minutes or 40 minutes to come to a boil, if I had to guess. So in the meantime, let me do the other prep steps. And I'm going to start by showing you the other equipment that I'm going to be using besides that stock pot. But let me talk about the stock pot. It's a stainless steel stock pot, which I've seasoned. Seasoned means there's a very thin coating of oil on it. And if I have time here, I'm going to show you how the seasoning is done, or how I do it. So a stainless steel stock pot that's been seasoned is a very nice non-stick surface. So very good for general purpose cooking. So some of the other equipment that I'm using, I've got a cutting board here, I've got a knife. This is just a medium-sized ceramic knife, very sharp, good general purpose knife. Got a can opener, I've got a garlic press, and got this large bowl and this fine mesh strainer. I'm going to use these at the end for taking the solids out of the broth. It's a metal bowl. Wouldn't want to use a plastic bowl for that purpose because I'd be worried about the plastic melting a little bit and leaching into the broth. I've got this pressure cooker here. This is a Chef IQ Smart Cooker. I don't think there's anything particularly special about it for this purpose. Any pressure cooker more or less would probably do the job of that as well. The purpose of the pressure cooker for this recipe is it shortens the time. So the way that I used to make broth before I started pressure cooking it is I would put the ingredients, first the animal parts, in a stock pot with water, and then bring that to a simmer over medium heat. And in that process, impurities start to rise to the surface, like sort of it's called scum, and I would skim that off with a spoon. And continue doing that for hours while simmering the broth. About an hour in, I would add the vegetables, or maybe more than an hour. The purpose of that being putting the animal parts in first makes it easier to skim off the impurities that are coming off of the animal parts because the vegetables aren't in the way. So that's why it makes sense to add the vegetables later with this stock pot method, which is a more traditional method. And so it takes a long time to extract the flavors from the ingredients by this method, and it's also letting off lots of steam, lots of aromas into the house. You're losing part of the broth from the emanating steam, and you're also losing part of it from the skimming. And you're losing some of the flavor because it's being carried off in the steam. The whole house fills with the smell of the broth, and so you can tell that a lot of flavor is being lost in that process. So what I found is that using a pressure cooker, right, I'm not losing the flavors because it's not letting off steam while it's cooking. It doesn't take as long. It's a more intense process, so I end up extracting much more flavor in less time. And I don't need to skim it. I would say the main downside of this pressure cooker method compared to the traditional method is the broth that I get is not as clear. So if that matters to you, then you could use the more traditional method. Typically, it doesn't matter to me. Typically, I don't care if my broth is clear. I'm just going to put it in a soup or a sauce, and that soup or that sauce is not going to be clear anyway. So it doesn't really matter to me. Now, let me so what other tools am I going to be using here? I've got this. I've got these hot pads. I'm going to need these for picking up the pot out of the pressure cooker when it's done. And that's about it, I think. Not a whole lot of equipment needed for this. So let's go into the other ingredients. I showed you the beef beet and the bone broth. I'm going to use tomato paste, 6-ounce can of tomato paste. And I'm going to use some thyme. And I'm going to use leeks. And I'm going to use parsley, garlic, carrots. I like these multicolored carrots. Some of them are orange, some of them are like yellow, some of them are purple. They're fun. I'm going to use this onion. All of this stuff is just going to go right into the broth. It's going to sit there in the pressure cooker. The flavors will be extracted from the ingredients, and then I'll have a broth that I can use as a basis for other broths, soups, curries, sauces. Like I said, I use this beef broth for everything. Same recipe every time, basically, depending on what ingredients I can find. Right, the recipe will mainly vary in the animal ingredients, depending on what's available to me. Start by getting some garlic. I'm going to use a whole head of garlic in this recipe, and not in the usual way. Oh yeah, I showed you this garlic press. I'm not actually going to use it. It was a mistake for me to take this out. So what I'm actually going to do is put the whole cloves into the broth. So you see you've got this head, it's got all these cloves, they've got this skin covering them. I'm going to break it up into the cloves. I'm going to take off the excess skin, separate it from the cloves. I'm not actually going to peel the cloves, so there's still going to be a layer of skin around each clove. But all the excess skin that's just like, that I can easily tear off without using a knife, I'm going to tear it off. And I'm just going to start throwing my ingredients that are going to go into the broth into this bowl here, just to stay organized. I'm also accumulating some water over here. I don't know exactly how much water that I'm going to need, so I've just been running water through my Brita filter and accumulating it in this bowl over here. It looks like I've probably got enough. Unless the water where you live is really pure, it's usually better to use filtered water for cooking. I didn't use filtered water to cover the feet for the blanching, but for the water that's actually going to go in the broth, I'm filtering it just using this basic Brita filter. Okay, so the garlic is all set. I'll move on to carrots. I'm gonna use like 12 ounces of carrots. I'm just going to pull out my scale here. Set it to ounces. And, that works out to like, I think, 2, 3 carrots, maybe 4. Depends on the size of the carrots. Alright, so that's it's about 13 ounces of carrots. 1 orange, 1 yellow, 1 purple. That'll work. I'm gonna wash them off. And then just, roughly chop them into discs, and I'm going to discard the ends on both sides. Just get these clean little discs. I'm not too concerned about what size they are. It doesn't really matter because they're not for eating. I'm just extracting the flavor from them. So just roughly chop them up. The thing about carrots, you might notice they have dirt on them, and washing them doesn't really get off all the dirt. I'm okay with that. A little bit of dirt never killed anybody. It's probably good for you to eat a little bit of dirt, at least in my opinion. Alright, so now let's move on to the leeks. These leeks are not in an ideal condition. You can see this one here has some, maybe you can see it, it's drooping, it's got some goopy stuff on it. I'm just going to take off the gross parts of the leeks for starters, and then I'll wash them off. Most of this leek is still going to be fine, I'm sure. Just peel off the outer layer. Yeah, see this inner part of the leek looks beautiful. Peel off the outer layer on all of them, and I discover a little bit of dirt inside the leek. That's normal. Leeks always have dirt inside them. I gotta wash it out. Alright, washing them off now. Now I'm not going to use the whole leek. I'm going to use the white parts and some light green parts. So let me show you where I split this. If you look inside these two split ends, you can see I've got some white parts and some light green parts showing up. This is the half that I'm going to throw out. I'm not going to use it for anything. And then this is the part I am going to use. I'm going to slice it up into discs. It's got a little bit of dirt in it, but nothing that concerns me. Oh, yeah, there's actually more dirt than I saw at first in here, so I'm just going to run these slices under the water into this fine mesh strainer along with the other leeks. So do the same thing here. Oh, and also want to be clear, this end piece here with that stuff, I don't know how to describe that stuff. I'm not using it. Alright, now just a quick rinse to wash off some of the dirt. Okay, so next thing I'm going to put in is the thyme. I'm going to use 10 sprigs of thyme, which is not a really precise amount, because sprigs have different sizes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to use more thyme than that. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Those are kind of small sprigs. Don't need to be precise about the amounts when you're making broth. All of these ingredients are just going to contribute a subtle flavor. So now here's my parsley. I'm going to add 10 sprigs of parsley, so more parsley than thyme because the sprigs are bigger. The flavor isn't as strong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I've got so much parsley, might as well use a little more. Okay, so next thing I'm going to add is bay leaves. These are an especially subtle ingredient. They have a strong smell if you smell like a bottle of bay leaves, but you can't really taste them when you put them in a dish, but they do change the flavor, at least from what I've heard. If you put like 2 identical dishes next to each other, one with bay leaves, one with not, you can taste a difference. It's like a flavor enhancer. It doesn't like contribute its own distinct flavor to the dish, although it does have this very unique smell, kind of like somewhere in between like rosemary and mint. I might describe it that way. My recipe calls for 2 bay leaves. These are small bay leaves. I'm going to use 4. So the next thing is this onion. This is a small onion. I'm just going to peel it and dice it. So my process for doing that, first I cut off the end that looks like this, and then I cut off the other opposite end. And now that's going to make it easy for me to peel off the outer layer. Like the skin, and sometimes I'll take the whole first layer off too, under the skin. I'm going to do that in this case because it's got like a rotted out bit, but it's just on the outer layer. And this inner layer, it has a much whiter color. It looks totally clean and pristine. So that's good. That's better for something you're going to use. Now, my next step for dicing an onion. This is a very efficient method of dicing an onion, but you got to be careful with it because you can easily cut yourself if the knife slips. So I'm going to cut it in halves, like so. And then I'm going to take the first half, lay it flat on the cutting board, and I'm going to cut it right down the middle. So now my halves in halves look like this. And now I've put the halves back together, and I'm cutting parallel to my first cut. I'm cutting each of the halves of half into 3 segments. And it's that last cut there where the risk of me cutting myself is greatest, because I have to hold the end of the onion and then cut right above it. If I don't cut all the way into the onion, if the knife slides down towards my fingers, then it could cut my fingers. And so the sharper your knife is, and the more attention you're paying, the safer a process this is. Now I'm going to cut it into slices opposite, perpendicular to the cuts I just made. So I'm cutting it into like little squares, if you will. And then the last cut here, in that direction, the same risk exists. Now cut it into these tiny pieces. It's just because of the way the onion is structured, now it falls apart into little pieces. I'll use the same cutting technique for onions that I'm going to serve in food. And then I'll do the same thing to the other half. And now I can open up this tomato paste can. This is a 6-ounce can. Add that as well. Now my eyes are watering from the onion. I've heard that if you refrigerate the onions, that it will reduce that effect. I can see my beef feet. The water is close to coming to a boil. I'll show you what it looks like on the surface of that water in a moment after I spoon out this tomato paste. I like the Simpo tomato paste. It's a good brand. No sponsorship. So yeah, let me try and show you what this water looks like. You can see it's got this like foam on the surface. If this water was going to go in the broth, that foam is stuff that I would skim off. There's also like pools of fat accumulating on the surface. That I would also skim off if that water was going to go into broth. And so this blanching process is basically removing stuff that I would probably remove anyway. So yeah, I finished all the prep of the non-animal ingredients. Got the water. So I'm just waiting on the blanching to finish. I'm going to do a little cleanup while I'm waiting on that. It's always a good idea to clean as you go so you're not left with a big mess at the very end. Hi, Charlie. helpful tip for making broth is once you're done, it can be useful to reduce it. So that process is you bring it to a boil in a stock pot, and you just let it boil until it's reduced in size to whatever size you want it to be. If you let that process go on too long, you can eventually boil off all the liquids, and then you burn the remainder, and you've just ruined your broth. So you gotta kind of keep an eye on it to avoid that. At least half an eye. Check it once every 30 minutes or so. I mean, it depends on the temperature you're boiling it at and how far along it is. Mainly the advantage of that is convenience of storing it. You can also use it to further concentrate your broth and enhance its flavor. Oh, I can hear my BP boiling. So, grab the strainer here, just dump them out. Take it off once it starts boiling, because if you leave it on after it's already boiling, at that point you're extracting the flavors and nutritional substances that you want to keep. So these blanched beef feet look different than what we started with. What we started with, you could see blood. This has lost its color. It's white. So, hence the term blanching. It's like French for white or something, I'm not sure exactly. So, now I'm ready to put it all together, start to cook. So I've got the pot for my pressure cooker. Added the beef feet, add the bone broth. I want to show you what this looks like. It's pretty cool.
All right, what's happening? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. How about you?
Good, good.
And I'm just going to pour over the water until the pot is almost full. And I had just the right amount of water. That worked out to about 6 pints. So, plug in the pressure cooker. Make sure that it has the O-ring, which keeps it sealed. Close the lid. Set it to sealed as opposed to venting. Turn it on. Why is it not turning on? It's not plugged all the way in. Now it's on. Alright, so I'm going to do a manual setting. It's in pressure cook mode. Set the cook time to 3 hours. Set it to high pressure with a quick pressure release at the end. So that means when it's done cooking, it's going to release all the pressure. Sometimes, kind of depends on the water level, it'll spray all over the kitchen and make a huge mess, which can be annoying to clean up depending on your perspective. But it doesn't annoy me at all because compared to the traditional way of making broth, this pressure cooker method saves so much time. So now it's going to build pressure. It's going to cook for 3 hours after it's done building pressure. Then it's going to release the pressure. And then I'm going to use that big bowl and that fine mesh strainer to strain out solids. And then maybe I'll reduce it to make it easier to store. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Hope this was helpful.